Hey everybody, Tim here with today's review of James Bond movie number 11, Moonraker. At least it's movie number 11 in the official Eon Productions. Anyways, this was a great movie. I really enjoyed this one. I had done a little bit of research and saw like it was pretty mixed reviews. Like some people thought it was just insane, like it was way too over the top, and some people really liked it. It actually had like the highest grossing Bond title until like GoldenEye came out. So I don't know, you can kind of take it for what you will. Originally, the next movie was supposed to be For Your Eyes Only, but Star Wars came out in like 77, and so they decided to make Moonraker the next Bond movie to kind of keep up with it and capitalize on like the sci-fi and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, I actually really enjoyed this one. By the time we get to the end with all of the space scenes and the laser battles and stuff like that, it is a bit much, but even like not counting that, just looking at the opening scenes and all of that, I was really engaged. Like I really liked this movie. In several of my other reviews, I kind of talk about how like the beginning of a Bond movie and the end of a Bond movie are usually really good, but that whole middle part, there's a lot of scenes that I would take out, and it kind of slows you down and you get a little bit fatigued by the time you get to the end. For the most part, this actually kept me really engaged all the way through. So, something also to kind of mention is this is the last movie to feature Bernard Lee as M, which is kind of sad, but he ends up passing away after this movie before the next one. So it's kind of interesting to note how many scenes he's in this movie as well. So anyways, from the very beginning where we see like the shuttle take off on top of the plane was a really good effect. I really liked it, and just kind of like when the shuttle takes off and then the back, like the flames come back and it hits the aircraft and it like explodes, it was a really well done effect. I was really into it. When we actually do see Bond on the plane and he's like with the woman, and then like the guy like shoots the cockpit and jumps out, I'm going to say right now, this is the first time where Roger Moore is really kind of showing his age. He's starting to get some of the laugh lines, and he's kind of a little wrinkly, and just the way he kind of looks up. For the most part, like I can kind of ignore it, because I know Roger Moore was 5 years older than Sean Connery, so they actually went older rather than younger. But that specific scene where he looks up, I was like, oh yeah, you're like past your peak for being like a secret spy agent. And I mean, I wouldn't say it bothered me, but it was definitely like you should probably be looking at recasting this role at some point. And they don't. He does like 3 more movies. But I do think it's interesting to note that. Jaws makes his return, which I believe he is one of the very few henchmen to come back for more than one movie, especially in these older movies. I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a chase scene, but the whole parachute scene was really well done. I really liked it, just the way it was filmed with the two of them fighting and stuff like that. And then, of course, Jaws jumping in there as well. By the time we get to the end of it, it's a little bit much, where Jaws tries to open the parachute, but it doesn't, and he actually starts flapping his arms. I was like, that's unneeded. I didn't need it to become like cheesy and hokey. But for the most part, it was a really well done shot, seeing like Bond do all of the little techniques and flips and stuff like that. We see M and Q again, which is great. Bond meets the main villain, Mr. Drax. And then as soon as Mr. Drax is like, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Goodhead, I was like, that's going to be a woman. And sure enough, Dr. Goodhead is Holly Goodhead. And I mean, sometimes like the names that they come up with these Bond women are way over the top. This is definitely one of those times where it's like, really? Like, that's I mean, what could you not say? Like, good thighs and stuff like that. Like, it's like way too much for me. I like the scene where Bond is like in the astronaut thing, where it's like testing out like how many G's he can take and stuff, and she's like, oh well, most people can go up to 7, and I'm pretty sure we saw it get up to 13 at one point, where she like Goodhead says we're like, that's almost fatal at that point. So it's kind of interesting to see that scene. And then of course when Drax, like his pilot shows Bond like where the secret safe is, and Drax knows it, and he sicks his dogs on her, like that was an intense scene. I love the Close Encounters of the Third Kind shout out where he has to like put in the musical notes to unlock the door, and it's like dun 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 dun. I love that. I thought that was a great shout out. The boat chase was actually really well done. The first two Roger Moore movies both had boat chase scenes, and they were both fairly well done, except for the sheriff. I hate that damn sheriff character, and I brought him up every single time because that's how much I hate him. This one was actually fairly well done. And I actually like the scene where like he turns it almost into a float in a parade where the wheels kind of branch out but they're covered up, and then he starts driving through the street. I thought it was a really great scene. We see the scene where James, it made no sense to me. Like, this is kind of one of those fatigue moments where I was starting to get a little burnt out. But the scene where Jaws and the woman and Bond are like doing their dancing thing in the alley, and like Jaws keeps trying to bite her, and then all the people come and he's like, oh no, we're just dancing. And then they leave and he tries to bite her again, but Bond rescues, and then all the people show up again. Like, I was like, I mean, it was kind of an interesting scene, but by that point I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting a little tired at this point. When they're in like the skiing area and they're on like the cars, and like that was a fantastic scene where Jaws like bites through the cable. Evidently that was licorice. I hate black licorice. I hate Jaeger. So nope, not having that at all. But where and then like Bond like zip lines down the other one. I'm kind of a bigger guy, so anytime I see zip lining, I'm like, oh, it's gonna break. So that was kind of an interesting scene. And then just the two of them fighting, and Bond even says like, oh, it's Jaws. Like he knows who it is at this point, and he's like, no, let's not do this. But then like how do I say this? So like Bond zip lines down there, and then Jaws in the car like crashes into the building, and then he meets a woman. Like, how crazy is this? It's again one of those things where it's so over the top that it's actually really well done. I loved the scene where Jaws is chasing Bond, and Bond is in the boat, and then he like busts a hang glider out of it and like takes off, and Jaws is like, are you shitting me right now? And sure enough, they go over the ledge, and like every time you think Jaws dies, but he's like immortal, he can't die. But it's a great shot to watch the hang glider kind of bust out of the boat. It's a very Jungle Book type scene, but where Bond is like flung into the water. And at first, when all the women show up, I'm like, is this going to be like some sort of heaven and paradise moment? But sure enough, he gets flung into the water and the snake kind of goes after him. I don't know. It reminded me of the Jungle Book. Like, it was very Mowgli style. And then he like busts out the needle and then kills the snake. And I was like, okay, like that whole scene could have been taken out. Wouldn't have missed a beat, but it was still kind of a fun scene. And like this is that moment where you can pinpoint where the movie like goes over the top, whereas through all of these little chase scenes it's a lot of fun, it's really enjoyable. This is that moment where from after here the rest of the movie it's like, okay, like that's different, that's not what I was expecting. Because here we actually see Bond and Holly, I'm not going to call her Goodhead, we see Bond and Holly go up into space, and it ends up being like this Noah's Ark thing where Drax has like tried to pick the best of the best, and he has like the perfect people to create a new civilization. And Bond actually convinces Jaws to switch sides, because he says, like, you know, Drax is picking the best of the best. Like, are you and your girlfriend really considered the top percentile of like the human race? And sure enough, Jaws kind of switches sides later on. And then we get the laser battles, and that's where it's like, oh, like really, like you're trying way too hard to be Star Wars at this point, because they're just like and it's just a light show going on in space. Finally, we do see Bond push Drax out of the airlock, and it's a great scene. Jaws has the only line he's ever spoken in the Bond movies, where he's like, here's to us, with him and his girlfriend. And then Jaws, sure enough, helps Bond and Holly escape by like ejecting the space shuttle off to him. And then Q has probably the best line ever, where they see Holly and Bond going at it in like zero gravity, which would be kind of interesting. And then they're like, what is he doing? And Q's like, I think he's attempting re-entry. And it's like, okay, that's actually a pretty good line. Like, I'm totally down for that. And Q gets to deliver it, which is even better. They do kind of go out of their way to mention how Jaws and his girlfriend survive, because there was rumors that they were going to bring them back, but then eventually they said forget it. Like, Jaws had done his 2 movies, we don't need to see him again. And I liked the scene where we see Bond, Bond and Holly kind of chasing the satellites, blowing up in space. Overall, I thought this was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It did not take itself too seriously, which is what some people didn't like, especially after this movie. One of the complaints was that it was so over the top with the gadgets, with the comedy, with stuff like that, that it wasn't serious enough. And that's what I liked about it. So maybe I'm not like the right Bond kind of guy. But overall, I would really say I enjoyed this movie. So for those who have seen this one, what did you guys think? Go ahead, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time for Your Eyes Only.